Discover the surprising truth: 5 incredible ways WW2 soldiers transformed their lives forever. Jack Thompson trudged along the familiar dirt roads of Maplewood, Nebraska, dragging the weight of a past he struggled to escape. At just 24, his youth felt stolen. A battlefield had etched scars deeper than flesh. Friends gone, dreams shattered. "You were supposed to come back and help, Jack." His father's voice echoed in his mind, thick with expectation, laden with disappointment. Jack's heart tightened at the thought of his family legacy crumbling like the weathered barn in the distance, a tangible reminder of what once was. In his absence, his father's small machinery shop, once a pillar of pride, had sagged under financial strain, and Jack could still see the shadows of his mother's sacrifices etched on her tired face, a constant reminder of the dreams she had shelved for the sake of familial survival. With each step, he sought the warmth of old friendships, desperate for a flicker of hope. One friend had become a celebrated architect, breathing new life into dreams that once felt dormant, igniting the spark of possibility within Jack. "We can rebuild our community, Jack. Imagine what we could do if we pull together." The enthusiasm reverberated through him like a gunshot, but the clamor of self-doubt, a thrumming worry that he didn't belong in this new world, reared its head. What could a farmer offer in a realm of vision and design? Jack hesitated, torn between admiration and fear. The weight of his father's expectations bore down heavy on him. Before he realized it, he found himself entangled in a bitter struggle against a powerful developer intent on snatching the land from under his family's feet. Jack's stomach churned at the thought of losing what little remained of his family's legacy. How could he confront a man fueled by greed and ambition when he felt so small? Anger churned with feelings of inadequacy. Was he destined to repeat the failures of his father? Or could he muster the strength to safeguard their dreams? Each day felt like a countdown to despair, every step toward resistance weighed down by uncertainty. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Yet, as time slipped away, he couldn't shake the realization that countless veterans faced their own valleys of despair, yet remained untouched by adversity. Their resilience sparked an ember within Jack. Why couldn't he follow their lead? Why couldn't he be the architect, the visionary? The conflict waged within him, an inner war between tradition and aspiration. Each night became a battlefield of sleepless thoughts, weighing his family's honor against the fierce pull of his own dreams. Caught between nostalgia for the past and a desire to forge a new future, Jack stood at a precipice, teeth clenched in anguish. The developer's deadline loomed like a shadow, threatening to swallow his hopes whole. Would he rise up as the leader he wasn't sure he could be? Or would he slide back into the familiar shadows of his father's bygone days? Jack took a deep breath, tension coiling within him, waiting for a sign, a reason to step forward and reclaim everything that was his. The sun broke through the horizon, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink, the world waking up to promise. Jack stood still, the weight of the morning air mingling with the weight of his thoughts. The stakes had never felt higher. Today, he knew he needed to do something, anything, other than wallow in indecision. As the sounds of early risers echoed around him, he recalled his father's resolute tone, which had often echoed through the machinery shop. You can either be a victim of circumstances or the architect of your future. Those words resonated in his mind, awakening something within him. What if he became that architect? What if he dared to sketch a blueprint for his future? With newfound determination, Jack marched toward the machinery shop. The familiar creak of the door brought a rush of memories. Working alongside his father, the tang of metal that filled the air, and laughter that mingled with the sound of gears grinding. Today, instead of dread, he carried the fervor of possibility. "Jack, you're here early." His mother's voice, brimming with warmth, caught him off guard. She was organizing tools in their old toolbox, and for the first time in weeks, he took a good look at her face, the lines etched deep from hardship and worry. A pang of guilt twisted in his gut. "How are you feeling today?" "Better, I think," he replied, unsure whether it was the truth or a lie meant to bolster his own resolve. While working alongside her, Jack pondered practical steps. He had heard murmurs of the developer's plans. Words of intimidation hung heavy in town. But maybe, just maybe, he could gather support from those who shared his fears for the land. Memories of his friend, the architect, surfaced again. Their shared vision of a flourishing Maplewood echoed in his mind. Without more than a sense of purpose, he decided to reach out to others in his community. Once the shop was closed, he headed to the local diner, a familiar hub where old friends gathered to share stories and ideals. His heartbeat quickened as he pushed through the door. Heads turned, and conversations quieted, turning towards him. "Jack, you back from the front lines?" one old friend jeered, but there was no malice in his tone. Jack forced a smiled. "I'm fighting a different battle now." He took a deep breath, the tension wrapping around him like a familiar cloak. "I'm here to talk about saving our land. I need your help." Laughter echoed across the room, but it masked his rising frustration. Were war heroes reduced to mere punchlines? He clenched his fists, a decision boiling within him. He wouldn't allow his past to define him any longer. Voices hummed around him, and he searched for common ground, the pulse of shared struggle evident in their wearied expressions. "Imagine what we could build together if we rallied," Jack proposed, the spark of his earlier ideas igniting the passion he longed to channel. "This isn't just about land, it's about preserving our futures." Gradually, conversations swirled back to life, eyes lighting up as he inspired them with tales of resilience in the face of adversity. The urge to discard the weight of his insecurities morphed into determination. If he could share his vision, ignite their ambitions, perhaps they could forge a path toward reclaiming their legacy together. But with each passing moment, Jack felt the clock ticking, an unrelenting reminder of the looming deadline. The developer lurked in the shadows, waiting to swoop in and seize what remained of Maplewood's heart. Jack's heart raced. A promise forged in that diner amongst old friends beckoned him forward. However, a familiar voice tugged at him. The ominous tone of defeat whispered doubts that he had to confront. The time had come to face not just the developer, but the lingering ghosts of his past that threatened to repeat the cycle of failure. Would he have the courage to stand firm, or would he fold under the pressure of expectations? With the resolve to fight ignited deep within him, Jack knew one thing. Now he was ready to claim not only his family's legacy, but carve out his own identity against the forces that sought to bury it. The battle ahead would demand every ounce of strength he had, a fight for both the land and his spirit. The moment had arrived, and it would define not just Maplewood's future, but his own. As Jack stepped out of the diner, determination coursed through him. He found himself at the crossroads. The next move would shape everything. Where would he find the strength to confront the very essence of his fears? The air felt thicker as Jack stepped away from the familiar warmth of the diner, each breath heavy with the stakes pressing down on him. His strides quickened, fueled by the thoughts swirling in his mind, a concoction of ambition, doubt, and the recognition that he stood on the precipice of change. Outside, the sky was a vibrant canvas reflecting the tumult within him. He had spoken boldly, but deeper down, a quiet fear lingered. Was he truly capable of leading a movement? As a soldier, he had faced adversaries where the physical was clearer. Now, the enemy was insidious, one with legal contracts and persuasive power. Jack grappled with the reality of navigating through political maneuvering and community sentiment, all while feeling the weight of expectation settle heavily on his shoulders. Choosing a path wasn't just seizing an opportunity, it meant reshaping himself into something he had not yet fully defined. His internal conflicts whispered insidiously about failure, but the words of his father rekindled the fire within him. Every challenge during the war had required him to adapt and rally forces. Perhaps this new battle called for the same tenacity. He arrived at the empty machinery shop, a silent refuge, and let its quietness cradle his thoughts. The echoes of his father's teachings filled the void and urged him to lean into creativity. He pulled out a notepad and sketched out ideas, detailed points on how to rally the townspeople. With each stroke of the pen, he was not just jotting down notes, but carving a strategy to confront the multifaceted challenges ahead. With the sun inching towards its zenith, he decided to pay a visit to his friend, the architect. Tavi had the vision that Jack lacked, a mind adept at seeing the potential of spaces, but also equipped to strategize across community plans. As he drove through familiar streets, the weight of his mission settled in. This was no longer about nostalgia, it was a matter of legacy. Jack knocked on Tavi's studio door, a place that always exuded creativity and innovation. The hinges creaked as Tavi swung it open, his expression shifting from surprise to intrigue. "What brings you here?" Tavi asked, sensing the urgency that hung in the air. "Maplewood is in trouble, and I need you to help me protect it," Jack replied, the gravity of the statement falling between them like a lead weight. Tavi's brow furrowed. "What's happening?" "A developer plans to tear down parts of our legacy to build something that serves only profit," Jack explained. "But we can design a way to fight back. I want to inspire our neighbors to see it like we do, as a home worth preserving." As they brainstormed, ideas flowed as effortlessly as the pastiche of sketches strewn across Tavi's workspace. Jack felt stronger with each collaboration, discovering hidden capabilities within himself as he learned to communicate his passions more effectively. Tavi's suggestions challenged Jack's perspective, expanding his view on how to engage the community. The meeting melded with a shared resolve, bolstering Jack's belief that rallies based not simply on nostalgia but on tangible visions could unite Maplewood against the looming threat. As they sketched plans that could marry development with local heritage, a profound sense of purpose surged through him. Yet, beneath the pragmatism and vision lay an incessant hum of anxiety. What if they couldn't generate enough momentum? Fear tugged at him, but it paradoxically fueled his resolve. He had wrestled against fear before, and he would do it again if the choice led them closer to securing the heart of their town. With newfound ideas etched in his mind, Jack was compelled to put them into action. He would not linger in theoretical discussions. Instead, he would organize a town hall meeting to present their vision and instill hope. But as he prepared to leave, the gnawing fear of failing to meet the expectations of those around him loomed large. His hand rested on the doorframe, no longer uncertain, but recognizing the profound step ahead. Would he summon the courage to present their plans against not just the developer, but also his own fears? The line between hope and despair was thin, and as he walked away, he sensed that this moment was pivotal not just for Maplewood's future, but his own transformation. What awaited him at that meeting could either be a catalyst for change or an unveiling of deeper vulnerabilities he had yet to confront. Would he rise to the occasion, or would he allow the weight of doubt to push him back into the shadows? As he drove away, a single thought lingered. This challenge would demand everything, but what would he discover about himself in the process? Jack's heart raced as he gripped the steering wheel, the engine's hum echoing his internal tumult. The path grew narrower as he approached the community hall, leaves swirling, mirroring his thoughts. This was not just a physical destination, it was a crossroads in his life. The adrenaline coursed through him, a blend of excitement and dread. As he parked and stepped out of the car, he glanced at the town hall's facade, the chipped paint and weathered bricks telling a story of resilience. Yet, deep down, he understood that stories could be rewritten. Today, he would attempt to rewrite his own. Entering the hall, the soft murmur of voices enveloped him, insistent and hopeful. Jack scanned the room, noticing familiar faces, old friends, childhood mentors, and some who had only seen him as the soldier returning home. Today, he was not just Jack, the combat veteran, but Jack, the advocate for Maplewood. The weight of their expectations pressed against him, amplifying the sudden vulnerability swelling within. He took a deep breath, standing to the side as people engaged in animated discussions about the looming development. In that moment, the nerves coiled more tightly around him, whispering a familiar litany of self-doubt. Was he truly capable of leading this charge? The self-assuredness he had once commanded in battle felt but a shadow here. Yet, as he surveyed the sea of faces, he noticed something remarkable. The townspeople, for all their varied opinions and apprehensions, shared a glimmer of unity in their passion for Maplewood. Jack felt an instinctive pull toward them, a burgeoning resolve forming within. He had once inspired loyalty and courage in his platoon. Perhaps he could ignite that same fire in the hearts of his neighbors. Jack stepped further into the hall, clenching and unclenching his fists to ground himself. Taking his place at the front, he cleared his throat, gathering the attention of the room. The murmur softened, eyes shifting toward him with anticipation. "Thank you all for coming tonight," he began, his voice steadier than he had expected. "We are here because Maplewood matters to us. Each brick in our history is a testament to who we are. But now we face a threat that could change everything." The words spilled from him, each one intertwined with the hope he felt surging within. He spoke of the developers' plans, of lifelong memories embedded in the town's corners, and the dreams of future generations that hinged upon the preservation of their legacy. With every phrase he uttered, he could feel the energy of the room shifting, his conviction becoming their rallying cry. Yet, as he pressed on, he noticed a familiar figure in the back, Cliff, an influential voice in the community, a man whose opinions carried weight. The skepticism etched on Cliff's face sent a ripple of unease through Jack. What if this was the barrier he couldn't overcome? But ignoring this distraction didn't feel true to his purpose. "We can't just stand idle while someone else redefines our home," he asserted, locking eyes with Cliff as he spoke. "Together, we can craft a plan that preserves our history while allowing for growth. We have to be the storytellers of our own future." Jack's delivery intensified, driven by the small flicker of belief in himself. The initial doubts battled against newfound confidence. He felt a part of him breaking free from the constraints of self-imposed limitations. As he finished, the crowd remained hushed, weighing his words. Silence stretched painfully before it erupted into murmurs and then louder discussions. He felt the blend of trepidation and exhilaration entwining like a braid, signaling that he had opened a door to possibilities that he hadn't dared to imagine just hours before. Yet, underlying this moment of triumph was another realization. The journey ahead would not be simple. The factions within the town were complex, and the uphill battle against the developer was just beginning. What would it take to galvanize this energy without fracturing the community further? Jack was unprepared for the magnitude of the challenge that lay before him, aware that both potential allies and adversaries were watching. The echoes of his speech continued to reverberate in the hall, but silence once more descended as Cliff stood, gathering his thoughts for the unpredictable response that lay ahead. It was in this moment of uncertainty that Jack felt the exhilarating pulse of true leadership, the willingness to face consequences regardless of the outcome. As he met Cliff's gaze, he braced himself for the confrontation that could determine the very fate of Maplewood. What would be the cost of pushing forward? And more importantly, what would he ultimately sacrifice in this relentless pursuit of change? Jack's heart thundered in his chest as he awaited Cliff's response, his mind racing through scenarios that would play out. The tension in the room thickened palpably. Each pair of eyes locked onto the two men. Curiosity mingled with apprehension. He could almost feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him, a slate of expectations etched into the air. Cliff rose slowly, posture rigid, his expression unreadable. Jack felt a twinge of instinctual unease. This was the man who had the experience of decades and the acumen to rally the town behind him, if he chose to. As Cliff began to speak, Jack's thoughts veered towards his own self-doubt. Would Cliff dismiss him? Would everyone see him as just a soldier playing politician? "I appreciate your passion, Jack." Cliff's voice was measured but firm, casting a ripple of uncertainty through Jack. "But passion won't pay the bills or protect our homes. We need practical solutions, not just rallying cries." The room murmured in agreement, a subtle shift in the tide of support. Jack's resolve wavered, but flickered back to life as he considered his response. This was a moment to assert himself, but how to do it effectively? The principles of combat strategy echoed in his mind. Assess the threat, consolidate your strengths, and find a tactical advantage. "Cliff, I understand that practicality is key," he started, trying to ground himself in the argument, focusing on the fact that Cliff was not the enemy, but a powerful ally to convince. "But if we only focus on what's easy or what's already being planned, we risk losing the essence of what makes Maplewood unique. We can figure this out, but we need to engage all parts of our community." Those words felt empowering, a step away from mere reactive defense to genuine leadership. Jack could feel the shift in his confidence, the adrenaline morphing from fear into focus as he realized the truth. He had the ability to shape the narrative and leverage the conversation in a new direction. Cliff narrowed his eyes slightly, a sign Jack welcomed. This could be an understanding forming. "Then tell us your plan. What do you propose?" A pause followed, a chance to formulate an actionable vision. Jack cleared his throat again. He could talk about solutions, infrastructure, town meetings, petitions, all extending beyond mere preservation to inclusive revitalization. He envisioned a task force, gathering various voices in a structured way, one that included not only dissenters, but those on the verge of apathy. "The first piece of our strategy must be a community forum," he said, leaping forward into the space, his vision transforming into words. "Let's invite all opinions onto a shared platform. Everyone deserves a voice, and their concerns matter. We'll identify what we can compromise on and where we can draw a line. We have to create a proactive plan that respects both our history and embraces the future." Cliff could see Cliff's brow relaxing slightly. "That's not a bad start," he conceded slowly, eliciting a ripple of perceptible relief. Confidence surged within Jack. He was gaining ground, re-engaging with the community through collaborative dialogue rather than confrontation. But along with enthusiasm, fear crept back in, weighing heavily against his initial victory. Would they rally behind such an open, potentially chaotic approach? What if the very discussion he wanted to spark turned into divisions rather than unity? The harsh realities of leadership danced in his mind, a path paved with uncertainty and the prospect of discord. The atmosphere in the hall shifted, with voices buzzing now, both challenging and exploring the new proposal. It was chaotic yet dynamic, colors of dissent and agreement melding like paint on a canvas. Jack made eye contact with Cliff again. The seeds of potential alliance had been sown. As he watched various groups cluster and discuss, he realized this was only the beginning, a mosaic of plans, fears, and aspirations. But to forge ahead, he had to confront not only the community's divisions, but also his own increasing self-awareness. The echoes of an internal voice clarified. Leading meant growing comfortable with discomfort. "Let's make this a turning point," he thought, adjusting his stance subtly, determination sharpening into focus. "I may not have every answer, but I can facilitate the questions that need asking." But as the meeting progressed, a sense of urgency gnawed at him. What if, through this collaborative effort, he uncovered deeper rifts and challenges that would pit neighbor against neighbor? Would he have the resilience to face it all head on? The clock was ticking, and the stakes were too high to falter. Jack needed to devise a strategy, not just for the next meeting, but for the deeper truths that remained unexamined in his pursuit of preservation. Would he manage to maintain the delicate balance of community interests, or would he unravel amidst the fray? As these thoughts whirlpooled through his mind, he felt a storm brewing, not just outside, but within. The real fight was just beginning, one that would demand every ounce of tenacity he had. What hidden challenges would reveal themselves as Jack focused more on genuine unity than surface-level agreement? And as he fought to keep his community whole, what would he discover about his own sense of belonging? Jack took a deep breath, the chatter of the room fading as his mind fixated on the complexities ahead. The adrenaline rush from his earlier assertiveness had transformed into a heavy intensity. Each discussion, each opinion expressed, was essentially a potential landmine. How would he nurture this newfound energy without letting it explode into chaos? As the meeting unfolded, he took a moment to observe the diversity of opinions surrounding him. Each voice he heard was tinged with stories of fear, hope, and confusion about the future. They were not just citizens, they were his neighbors, each carrying their own baggage along with their agendas. Jack felt an unexpected pull, a desire to connect, to understand the intricacies behind each concern voiced. Once in troop training, he had learned the importance of building rapport with those around him. It was the foundation of trust and teamwork essential to survival in combat. Maybe this could be translated here, in this new battleground of community engagement. His mind shifted to strategizing. How might he adapt military principles to bring unity amongst disparate voices? "Connection," he muttered under his breath, feeling the weight of the word. He needed to build genuine relationships, find common threads that would weave the fabric of a united front. Yet, how to start? The idea of crafting an impactful narrative filled with empathy and shared experience began forming in his thoughts. A narrative that couldn't be built in isolation. Cliff's voice cut through the noise as he led a focused discussion, outlining areas of potential compromise. Jack seized the moment and piped in, "While it's important to outline the logistics of what can be done, we also need to consider the emotional implications of our decisions. People are moved by stories. Offering a platform for those who feel unheard could change everything. Eyes turned toward him with varying degrees of skepticism and intrigue. Jack felt his pulse quicken again. This was it, the risk again to ensure an emotional investment from his community. His commitment to this vision reignited his sense of purpose, fueling a conviction he hadn't felt before. He wasn't merely advocating for a cause, he was opening a dialogue about meaningful change. Perhaps we could implement individual testimonials as part of our forum, he continued, feeling a rush of warmth at the thought of people sharing their experiences. By sharing what matters deeply to them, we create a roadmap of our community's values and beliefs. It allows for those who might not agree on specifics to find common ground in the human experience. An unexpected silence enveloped the room, the weight of new possibilities settling in. A few people began nodding, their faces shifting from skepticism to contemplation. The very air seemed charged with potential, igniting something within Jack. His focus sharpened, and he leaned into the energy surrounding him. People want to be heard, Jack pressed on, adrenaline lifting his voice. We can strategize all we want, but if we don't take the time to forge emotional connections, we're setting ourselves up for failure. Let's ensure our approach isn't only practical, but rich with understanding. What he hadn't anticipated was the way Cliff slid into the conversation, challenging him, but in a way that felt constructive. And how, Jack, do we balance that emotional connection with the pragmatism of the decisions facing us? Emotional rhetoric can be divisive when it doesn't align with tangible results. The question hit like a dart, awakening Jack's determination to confront the unpredictable depths of this venture. He envisioned a dialogue not just as a tool for problem-solving, but as a means of fostering connections and healing. This was his challenge, a test of his leadership not just to unify minds, but to bond hearts. He realized he might also need to confront his own vulnerabilities and reluctance in embracing an emotional leadership style. As the meeting continued, Jack moved through the discussions with renewed conviction, keenly aware of the stakes he and the community shared. With every passing moment, he understood survival meant more than navigating opposition. It involved personal transformation, challenging his own misconceptions about leadership and strength. Yet unease tightened in his chest. What if the emotional appeals fell flat, or worse, stirred up the deep-seated tensions lurking under the surface? Determined to guide this innovative approach, Jack braced himself for a storm he could neither predict nor control. He felt the weight of collective anticipation as he prepared to delve deeper, aware that the real challenge, the real revelation, was about to unfold. In the back of his mind, a thought lingered, unshakable yet inspiring. Would he unveil a part of himself he had long kept hidden in fear? Would bringing his vulnerability to the table yield a bond of strength among the community? Or would it prove to be his greatest downfall? Jack left the meeting with a knot in his stomach. He replayed every word exchanged, every reaction to his idea echoing through his mind. The challenge of engineering an emotional environment weighed heavily on him. Could he really create a space that allowed for vulnerability and honesty? What if his desires for connection revealed divisions rather than unity? As he walked home, Jack's thoughts spiraled. This task felt monumental, even more intricate than any military strategy he'd ever deployed. The stakes were human lives, emotions, and relationships instead of mere tactical maneuvers. The intensity of this endeavor intensified his self-doubt. He couldn't afford to fail, not now, when there was so much at risk. Once inside, he flopped onto his worn couch and stared blankly at the walls. Each empty space felt like a reflection of his uncertainties. He squeezed his eyes shut, memories of his troop training resurfacing. lessons taught by mentors whom he respected deeply. They taught him to dig deep and uncover the truth about oneself. Jack opened his eyes. What truth needed unearthing in his own heart? This was not just about leadership. It required him to strip back layers of self-protection and step into a realm of discomfort. He needed to be fearless, not just in the strategic sense, but in being open about his feelings. The thought brought a chill down his spine. He grabbed a notepad and began to jot down a strategy. The key words danced across the paper: empathy, vulnerability, connection, storytelling. Each word propelled him toward a goal that not only involved directing others, but also revealing himself authentically. How could he expect people to share their stories if he remained hidden behind a wall of authority? But how did one share vulnerability without feeling exposed? This dilemma loomed large in his consciousness. The lessons from the military echoed again. A leader must show strength, but strength doesn't always mean holding back emotions. Could he balance the two? The following morning, he resolved to practice transparency. He'd find a way to frame his experiences without diluting their complexity. Moments of doubt, difficulty, even failure could humanize him. He'd share a story from his past, perhaps one from his time in the service, that dared to reveal his own struggles. The thought of doing so sent a wave of nausea through him. Could he really open that door? Determined, he approached the community again, this time with a new mission in mind, a gathering specifically designed for storytelling. He needed to demonstrate the value of shared experiences through his own. As he prepared a brief speech to propose the idea, he felt the air shift, a mix of excitement and anxiety. Imagine, he spoke to himself in the mirror, an evening where we all gather, share, connect. A night to unveil ourselves in raw honesty. Slowly, the idea formed into something tangible. It wasn't just a meeting, it was an intimate gathering with a purpose. The intention was not merely to outline logistics, but to weave emotional threads into the fabric of their decisions. When the day of the gathering arrived, Jack stood before the small group gathered in a musky community hall. The atmosphere felt electric, charged with anticipation. Yet a part of him was paralyzed by the weight of vulnerability looming ahead. As he took a deep breath, words of his own story brewing in his throat, a moment of self-realization halted him. This was not just about leading. It was about uncovering the truth that resonated within him. Would this expose him or connect him? His heart raced, fear and hope intermingling. The moment of truth was here, hovering just in front of him. The boundaries between leader and follower felt thin. Would he leap into authenticity, knowing it could change everything? With the first words escaping his lips, Jack realized the risk he was about to take was not just a leap into the unknown, but a pathway to discover the strongest version of himself. A voice inside whispered, a truth so significant that it stirred both fear and exhilaration. What emerged from this discussion might not just be voices of the community, but the awakening of his own unspoken story as well. Jack's voice trembled slightly as he began to weave together the memories residing in the depths of his mind. He spoke about the fear that gripped him during his first deployment, a moment that had turned his world upside down. He recalled the night under enemy fire, hearts pounding, minds racing, soldiering through the chaos while feeling utterly alone. With each word, he peeled back layers of his stoic exterior, revealing a vulnerability that felt exposed, yet liberating. As he shared, he could see the group leaning in, their expressions shifting from curiosity to empathy. Jack's story was unfolding like a map, leading them through the valleys of his emotions. He recognized how their eyes sparkled with understanding. They weren't just hearing his words. They were resonating with their experiences, their fears, their vulnerabilities illuminated in the glow of his honesty. This exchange formed an unspoken pact between them, a silent acknowledgement that revealing oneself could indeed foster connection rather than division. A particularly bright-eyed woman in the group, Lisa, broke the silence that followed. "Thank you, Jack. It's hard to share these things, isn't it?" Her voice was steady, filled with genuine warmth. "I've been struggling with my own narrative. It feels like I'm lost in it, constantly battling what others expect of me." Jack nodded, his insides awakening to the realization that vulnerability invited vulnerability. It was an exhilarating leap into a realm of shared human experience. He encouraged Lisa to speak, and as she opened up, the further layers of his own walls began to dissolve. More stories emerged, spilling forth like floodwaters breaking from a dam. Jack listened intently, witnessing the raw realities that his peers had concealed for too long. Their stories echoed his, amplifying the sense of community Jack had endeavored to create. He felt not just like a leader, but a part of something meaningful, a collective experience binding them together. Yet, amid this revelation, a nagging doubt etched itself into his mind. Was this enough? As stories were shared, Jack felt an insatiable urge to push deeper, to challenge everyone in the room to confront something even more fundamental than their fears: how societal norms shaped their identities, disguising their true selves. The discussion took a turn. Individuals wrestled with the impact of societal expectations, a factor that weighed as heavily as any battlefield. Jack opened the floor for a moment, proposing an exercise. Let's take a minute to think about a time we held back because we felt we didn't fit in or feared judgment. What did we lose in those moments? As silence descended, Jack could see the gears inside their minds turning, lost in reflection. Moments stretched thin before emotions began bubbling up again. This was the depth he was searching for, the confrontation of personal truth buried beneath layers of expectation. Through the discourse, Jack discovered a newfound perspective on his personal journey. As he encouraged stories of resistance against self-suppression, he felt an implicit call to arms arise within him. Could he challenge himself and those gathered to not only share, but to commit to unlearning what had kept them contained? He posed it gently. What if we embraced our imperfections openly? Would that change something fundamental in our lives? In this shared atmosphere, boundaries further dissolved. Jack sensed that their vulnerability could unite them beyond shared experiences. It could stand as a bold declaration of identity, unfettered by external expectations. As the gathering drew to a close, Jack stood on the precipice of transformation. This engagement wasn't merely a community initiative, it was a personal awakening. While his heart felt lighter, he also realized that the journey ahead was intricate, filled with challenges they had only just begun to navigate. His resolve crystallized in that moment. He needed to facilitate more open dialogues, to push the boundaries of traditional conversations. The thrill of the unknown encouraged him, but so did the specter of fear that whispered just beneath his consciousness. He could feel the urgency of the task ahead. The question that left him unsettled as they parted lingered in his mind. Were they ready to confront the hard truths that lay beyond their walls? With the final words of the night still echoing in the room, Jack knew the path before him had shifted dramatically. Change demanded courage, and the time had come to face the weight of his own unspoken truths in a way that brought both potential and trepidation. Tomorrow he would delve deeper. The work had only just begun, and the challenges he had yet to address loomed, a silent yet potent adversary. What revelations would surface as he confronted the truths buried in his own heart? The morning sun streamed through the window, casting sharp beams of light that danced across the room, a contrast to the swirling thoughts in Jack's mind. He sat at the kitchen table, laptop open but untouched. The lingering energy of the previous night's dialogue sparked a sense of urgency, yet a hesitance gripped him. He questioned if he possessed the strength to face the deeper truths he had awakened, both within himself and in those he had inspired to share. Jack recalled the faces of his peers, the earnestness in their expressions as they navigated their own vulnerabilities. Each story had felt monumental, yet Jack grappled with feeling his own remained unfinished. What if he was only scratching the surface? He felt a stirring in his core, a force compelling him to act on the clarity he had momentarily glimpsed. Inspired by the collective challenge he had presented, he opened a blank document. The cursor blinked, demanding his attention, as if taunting him with hesitation. He typed, "What if we began to unravel the roots of our fears today? What if we peeled back the layers right now?" As the words flowed, he began to outline his own fears, the hidden truths that had remained buried. His regrets over pushing away people who had cared for him, the trauma that continued to haunt him from his service, and the relentless voice of comparison that taunted him when he least expected it. Each confession felt like a step toward liberation, but fear clouded his vision. The echo of Lisa's question returned, reverberating in his mind. Do we hide because we fear judgment, or because we fear our own authenticity? Jack pondered on the irony of shielding himself from their acceptance, juxtaposed against the openness he sought to create. Perhaps the very act of confronting these fears in himself would forge a stronger connection not only within the group, but also with himself. With newfound resolve, Jack decided to dig deeper, contemplating what practical steps he could take to foster real change. He envisioned small group sessions, circles of sharing, intentional yet free form, where participants could explore their thoughts without the confines of societal expectations. He understood the significance of not just sharing words, but embodying action. This could be a space to experiment with the authenticity he so fervently craved. He created a simple plan. Set up an intimate gathering where stories could coincide with guided exercises that prompted deeper introspection. As he mapped out the details, his anticipation built. What stories could emerge? How many would find their own narratives interwoven with his? The power of connection lay in the unknown, and he felt electrified by the possibility. Yet doubt crept back like an unwelcome guest. What if he failed to navigate the complexities that could arise? Or worse, what if he held back and dulled the vulnerable candor he had so fiercely advocated for? For a moment, he questioned whether he was equipped to lead others through this transformative process. Pushing against the tide of uncertainty, he reminded himself that vulnerability was not a flaw, it was a strength. The reflection of his peers, their struggles, their resilience, breathed life into his conviction. They were all in this together, navigating a landscape of shared fears and illuminated truths. As he wrapped up the details for the first session, a resounding thought echoed within him. The journey he was about to embark on would not solely unveil their truths, but catalyze a profound discovery of his own. Jack's heart raced with anticipation. He was at the cusp of embracing something monumental, yet the weight of responsibility loomed large. The stories they would share might unearth shadows he had avoided for too long. Would he be able to stand firm as an anchor, not only for himself, but for those who sought the same? That lingering question ignited a fire within him. It would not be easy, but it was time to confront the truths waiting to be unraveled. As he prepared for the gathering to come, a single pulse of determination surged through him. The moment of truth arrived. What would he discover, both in others and in himself, as they peeled back the layers? The day of the first storytelling session arrived with the crispness of autumn air, invigorating Jack's thoughts. He stood before the same community hall where revelations had begun to take root. As he arranged chairs in a circle, an unexpected calmness settled within him, erasing the lingering anxiety that had accompanied his thoughts in the days leading up to this gathering. Each chair, placed strategically, symbolized open hearts waiting to connect. Small notes and reminders scrawled on paper sat beside him: empathy, vulnerability, and connection. They surrounded him like a mantra, urging him forward. As the participants trickled in, Jack felt a quiet thrill, a shared anticipation woven among them. He recognized familiar faces: Lisa's earnest smile, Cliff's skeptical brow now softened with curiosity, and others whose stories had yet to emerge. Would this gathering fulfill the promise of connection he envisioned? Once everyone was seated, Jack could feel the energy shift in the room, a collective breath held in patience and hope. "Thank you all for coming today," he began, his voice steady and resolute. "We're here to share more than words, but to embrace the complexities of our experiences, stepping into vulnerability together." After laying out the session's framework, Jack opened the floor, inviting others to share their stories. The first speaker, a young man named Sam, recalled the moment he returned from his tour overseas, feeling lost amidst the ordinary life he had longed to rejoin. The struggle to adapt felt more daunting than any battle. As he spoke, Jack watched the group lean in, nodding in understanding. Here at last was the heart of his vision, every narrative weaved into a tapestry of shared humanity. When Sam concluded, applause erupted, an affirmation and recognition of both bravery and connection. It wasn't merely about the words spoken. It was about pride in acknowledging their struggles. With each story, Jack felt himself transformed, a blend of empathy and catharsis coursing through him. He observed the way walls crumbled around participants, each new voice igniting the air with raw honesty. Then it was Jack's turn to share. He began hesitantly, but as he delved into his experiences, words poured forth with newfound clarity. The journey from soldier to civilian flowed, encapsulating the burden of expectations he'd carried home, the emotional scars that continued to echo in his mind. As he disclosed the fears that haunted him, fear of inadequacy, of failing both his heritage and his new aspirations, a ripple of recognition spread across the room. Others nodded, eyes misty with understanding. This exchange was not simply a series of monologues. It was an ongoing dialogue that bound their stories into something greater. "Today isn't just about the past," Jack asserted as his thoughts crystallized. "It's about taking what we've shared and using it to grow forward, together." The challenge lay ahead, and he knew they would face adversity. But together, united through shared vulnerability, they could advance toward a collective future. As the day rounded out with laughter, tears, and exchanged contact information, Jack reveled in the atmosphere of solidarity that radiated from the group. Chairs that once stood empty now bore witness to transformative conversations that could reshape their community narrative. Stepping back into the world outside, Jack felt the sunshine warm his skin, invigorated with a sense of purpose. He recognized that the layers they had peeled back were not simply revealing truths, but also uncovering strength that lay dormant. The following days fell into a rhythm. Community circles became a monthly commitment, each session concentrating on deeper discussions around resilience and shared hope. They began charting a course for the future, transforming their anxiety over the developers' plans into actionable strategies that embodied both heritage and opportunity. Through it all, Jack solidified his position as a leader, not through bravado, but through authenticity and connection. He had begun to redefine his understanding of strength, not as an unyielding armor, but as an embrace of vulnerability. He was not just preserving a hometown, He was cultivating relationships and forging a legacy of resilience. Months later, at the town hall meeting, the unity was palpable. The pieces of their stories had become a shared vision, and Jack had transformed into a figure of recognition. Participating neighbors rallied around plans that encompassed preservation of their community, soliciting ideas instead of objections. "Jack!" a voice rang out. It was Cliff, standing proudly alongside Jack as they presented their collaborative blueprint to the community. "Thanks to everyone's input, we're not fighting for our land, we are working toward revitalizing it, together." With recognition washing over him, Jack beamed, a solid confidence radiating from within. He had claimed not only his family's legacy, but also reshaped his identity through shared struggle. In that moment of triumph, reflecting on the intricacies of their journey, he realized he had not entered this battle alone. The strength of the community had forged a profound transformation in him, a testament to the idea that authentic connections could pave the way for the future. And there, amid his neighbors, he finally felt as though he belonged, the architect of not just a homespun history, but of a vibrant, reimagined future. To all who have followed Jack's journey, this is the moment to step into your own transformation. Trust the power of your story. Lean into vulnerability, and with that shift, change your community. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Seriously, it makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about this conclusion. What have you learned about the power of connection? Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion, because helping others find their path begins with each of us. Don't wait even one more second to share.